So, George Lucas, for example. To me, an interesting side of this is your idea worth it? And so I mentioned before, I don't encounter the problem of not being able to come up with an idea often, right? But that doesn't mean that that idea is always fantastic or always worth working on. And often it isn't. Often that idea that you've come up with is like a great starting point. Great, like you've come up with an idea, sit down, start drawing it, sit down, start writing it, whatever. But you're gonna go at some point, oh, this is actually garbage, and then you're gonna have to go, all right, like I'm gonna drop this, but what can I get out of it? You know what I mean? There's that. So bring it back to George Lucas. Were the prequels like a good idea?
Yes.
Wow, great podcast. Episode over.
I think that the prequels are really great, and in terms of creative ideas, phenomenal, brimming with creative, new, different ideas, a very new and different take on the Star Wars universe, a wider scope, a different feel. Was it badly executed? Yes. But did it or did but if you look at the movies themselves as movies are pretty shit. But if you look at the outward inspiration that they created in the artists, the writers, and all of the different people, the fans basically, the wider community that were affected by its vision, similarly to how people were affected by the vision of the original Star Wars trilogy in the late 70s, early 80s. The people blew their freaking minds over all of this stuff, and although the movies were pretty garbage, the visuals and it doesn't make the movies good, but the visuals and the concept art was impressive. I love watching the special features. I love looking up art books. I love looking at the design processes behind the scenes of those films because it's just so interesting. I don't know how much money went towards it, but there were hundreds of concept artists and costume designers and all of these people being thrown at a movie. And, half of the stuff didn't make it onto screen, but even the stuff that did make it onto screen, even though it was just a small little smidgen of what was created, is still incredible. As opposed to, The Force Awakens, objectively a better movie, but it's a carbon copy of A New Hope. I still like it. I'm not saying that makes it void or anything like that. I like The Force Awakens. I think it's an enjoyable, well done movie. I think it's a homage. I don't think it's a remake, but it's good. I like it, but it doesn't capture the kind of ingenuity and just bleeding edge creativity that the prequels had. The prequels were very imaginative. Even though they didn't necessarily feel grounded in Star Wars, they were imaginative.
Are you done yet?
Well, you're the one who bloody complained about me being short-answered, sir. Yes, they were a good idea.
No, I didn't complain. No, but that's funny because you brought up about a million different things I wanted to talk about. But what's funny is, just off the last idea there, is the Phantom Menace, for example, versus The Force Awakens. The Phantom Menace is a better idea. But the story, as it's written, isn't. And that's, like you said, it's all in the execution. It's why that movie is shit is because George Lucas sat down and wrote it as a shitlord. Whereas the new one, the idea is you clearly made from executives and producers sitting in a boardroom going, we need to do this, but it was made good by someone sitting down from that prompt and going, I can still make something good out of this.
I think what the Force Awakens and the Phantom Menace, the Force Awakens and the Phantom Menace are polar opposites in the way of Phantom Menace is creative freedom out the wazoo, unrestrained creative freedom of one person who can just say, this is what it is, where everyone just follows their lead, just a bunch of sycophants doing whatever the hell they want, whatever the hell that one person wants. Whereas Force Awakens is too much on the other level of
it's too safe.
It's too safe. It's too many people going, oh, I'm not sure if we should do it. I'm not sure if we should do that. Like,
which is why I remember both first watching it, right? You loved it way more than I did, right? But it is, I did love it though. But it is one of those things where I think the more you watch it, the more its flaws are going to become apparent. Because you watch it and you're like, oh, I love it. And like, if you're not analyzing it, you're just going to get that feeling of like, oh, it feels real similar to the originals and all that. And then you analyze it for a second and you're like, oh yeah, that's why I like it, is because it's just the original. Whereas the Phantom Menace, it's like, it's real easy to hate it because on the surface it's like, oh, that's weird, that's dumb, that's stupid, that's an idiotic choice. Why did they do that? It's like, yeah, but at least, but if you analyze it for a second, you're like, okay, that's totally original. That's totally weird. That's totally out there. They came up with that not based on any of the original ideas from Star Wars. It's like they just came up with it. And how cool is that?
Yeah. Another cool thing, like you can see an evolution in George Lucas as a creator. You can see his grown-up ideas. Like
it's hard because maybe if you totally isolate the ideas from the execution, which I find is a difficult thing to do with the prequels, because it's like some of the ideas, I see what you mean, but then some of the ideas is like a 50-year-old man came up with that. What the fuck?
Yeah, I guess what I mean to say is, apart from his execution and his just...
Yeah, but you gotta still think that Jar Jar Binks is still an idea. And it's a bad idea.
Yeah, Jar Jar Binks is still an idea and it's a bad
He
idea.
keeps talking about the fact that that was meant to be like this comedy relief that was like injected in as like a slapstick alien. It's like, that's a bad idea.
I guess what I mean to say is, he's not the best when it comes to everything. What I mean to say when I say his vision became a little bit more matured or grown up in a certain aspect is the basis of the story. So the original trilogy is a hero's journey. It's a basic sort of story. It's a well-made story, but it's an adventure. It's one dude learning some skills, and he goes and fights the bad guys, and they win. And yeah, it's really well made. And yeah, it touches on some cool aspects. And yeah, there's threat and there's intrigue and there's beautifully made films for the most part. But it's a simple story, and that's why it works so well. There's a million different essays about why it works so well, and it's because it's just a simple hero's journey. That's great. However, the prequels, as badly executed as they are, they took a more complex approach of going, okay, we've seen the adventure movies, now let's see this kind of interesting political intrigue mixed with the destruction of a character.
Yeah, well, this is interesting because I think you're right in some way. Like, what he grew up with was the ideas came more from him purely, rather than like the originals are very, like, even the originals are homages to a lot of different type of stories, whereas the prequels, I haven't really seen anything like that. Like, yeah, it's political, blah blah blah, but like it's very of himself. Like, he's come up with that.
There are still a few minor things that are picked up on, like there is still on the nose references to the original trilogy, and there's actually like a few references to older movies. Like, he even threw in some old like samurai movie crap.
Yeah, but they're not. Those might be references, but they're not. The stories don't feel inspired by anything.
No, but I mean, one thing, and this was briefly touched on in I think in one of the Plinkett reviews or whatever, was that the Star Wars prequels are sort of Citizen Kane-y in a way, which is very interesting. If it was executed as well, a Citizen Kane-y Star Wars would have been like, oh wow, this is really interesting, but we didn't get that. And it's,
yeah. So basically, that.
What a tangent.